Alright, beautiful people, in today's episode we're going to be working on the rudder and the hatches. So, let's go ahead and get into the episode. What is a rudder and why put it on a kayak? A rudder is a steerable fin that you can use to drive a boat, or well, change the direction of the boat. So it hangs down in the water and it can turn to either side, and that helps to steer the boat. There are these two cables that run up through the inside of the boat, and those go to pedals that are down inside. And so you push on the pedals with your feet and it pulls on those cables, and that moves the rudder back and forth. The other part of the rudder is the way in which it's deployed. And so there are these two other cables, and these run in hoses that go down the side of the boat, and they come out here next to the cockpit. And so when you pull on one of these cables, it lifts the rudder up, and when you pull on the other cable, it puts the rudder down. And this way, when you're in the boat, if you're going over like seaweed or something like that, you can pull this rudder up and out of the water, and then when you want to use it again, you can lower it back down. Alright, you have to bear with me for a minute. This is going to sound really strange, but it is the afternoon, and still I am drinking coffee. I think that's because I'm on summer break. I'm not really sure. In any case, in order to get the rudder to work properly, I use stainless steel cable. So we're going to go back in time so that I can show you how I set this whole system up. We're going to go back to before the boat had a deck mounted on top of the hull, to where it was just the hull and the bulkheads, so you guys can see how I routed the cable for the foot pedals. And put a mark and make a mark. I'll make a mark. I'll make a mark. Now these two hoses are what the cable that moves the rudder are going to ride in. So the cable goes inside of the hose, and then it'll come out about here, and it'll go to the rudder, and it'll help the rudder to steer back and forth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a block of kind of resin and putty here at the back that will hold these two hoses at about that angle, and then I can kind of sculpt that and shape it once it's done. Now I'm just going to scar up the resin around here with some sandpaper so that the putty has something to stick to. And really, you know, all of this is going to get sanded and refinished anyway, so it's okay if it doesn't look beautiful right this minute. And I'm going to teach you a trick that I picked up for the best way to do this. Maybe I shouldn't be talking while sanding, I don't really know what I'm doing at all. We've got that. I've also mixed up some putty, and I've done so it's really thick, and it'll most likely stay where I put it. Now, the trick is to get something that the putty won't stick to, that I can use to shape the putty and put it exactly where I want it in the shape that I want it. That are soaking wet with acetone. And the acetone is going to keep the putty from sticking to anything, and also allow me to kind of shape it and put it where I want it. I'm going to add a little bit more wood flour to really get this super thick. I almost feel like with this you can't add too much. And having it be really thick is what's going to allow me to sculpt it. So I'm going to go ahead and scoop some out onto the paper towel, about half. It doesn't need to be perfect, because you can always put back what you don't use. And then I'm going to use the paper towel, and I'm going to kind of roll it. Let's see if I can do this where you can see it. I'm going to roll it into a kind of poop shape. It looks like I can probably do both of these in one go, so I'll get more of that out of there. Alright, I'm just going to roll it into a poop shape, and then it's done already. I'll just take this little piece of wood here and I'll cut this in half. Oops. And I will blob it on there. And I'll make sure that I get it all around. Okay. And I'll do the same thing on the other side. And now I can use the paper towel, which the glob isn't going to stick to really spread out and shape the kind of putty mixture. Make sure that it gets everywhere that I want it to get. Now once it's on here and it's about the shape that I want it, I can let it harden, and then I can use the angle grinder to really get it to be the shape that I want it. I used a piece of tape stretched across the back here to line this up, and now I'm going to use the angle grinder to cut these off at a sharper angle, just to nicen up the end. My wife wants me to lift her chair by 6 inches. I can't do 6 inches, but I think I can do 5. So I had these 2 pieces of pine that were kicking around outside. I think they were from the beams they used to make my house. At least I think it's pine. So I'm going to get to work machining these to make them into a thing that will hopefully do what she wants. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut these 2 boards to length. Now I'm going to use the bandsaw to square off the edges and cut these so that they're 5 inches wide. Now that I've got these 2 blocks, I made this template of the hole pattern in the bottom of the chair, and I need to transfer this hole pattern to these blocks. I traced the marks onto this board, so now I'm going to do them in this one. Now I'll line up the edge of my template and make the marks. On the chair itself, the ends of the template sat 11 inches apart. Because I moved them in 1/2 inch on the boards, that means I need to get these 2 boards so that the ends are 12 inches apart. So that would be about there. And measuring in between them, I have just about 5 inches. Now I'm going to countersink 2 holes in each block so that I can put screws through the holes into the spacer that I cut. Now all I need to do is drive 2 deck screws through the block and into the spacer on each side. Now to see if this works. So you can see that her feet don't touch the ground, but she's comfortable at her desk, so I guess it works. On this episode of Wrench Every Day, I'm going to install the rudder mount. Link in the description below. It's really hard to see what's going on here, but I will try to show you. So there are 2 holes in this piece of plastic that a rope goes through, and then you've got this ring around the outside of the back of the rudder. One of these is meant to pull the rudder up and onto the back of the boat, and the other is meant to pull it down and into the water. So I'm going to go ahead and tie this one off here in the bottom hole, and I'll just make a little knot here, and that should keep it from pulling back through the hole. The other rope which also comes in through here. Okay. So now I'm going to flip the rudder over onto the top of the boat, and I'm going to stick this rope in. It's hard for you to see that. Stick this rope in through here, and then I'm going to tie the same knot. And that way, the rudder will be able to flip back and forth based on pulling this rope. Run the cable around the pulley. Make sure that's not tangled up. It's really easy to do. And then there's a little track that the cable goes down. And then it feeds through this hole in the bottom and it goes to the front. It's going to go through this hole in the side, and we are going to crimp it using a ferrule crimping tool. So I've got a ferrule. I'm going to put the wire through the ferrule, make a little bit of a loop, and bring it back through the same ferrule. And I do this really just so that there's no way that it can slip out. And then we've got a ferrule crimping tool, and we're going to crush the cable into the ferrule. Now, the wire is trapped. You can pull out all the slack. Make sure all the slack is pulled out. That's actually kind of one of those nightmares where you run the whole everything and you do all the stuff, and then there's slack in the cable, and then the cable moves on you, and it's terrible. Okay, so now I've got slack in the cable. I've got all the slack out of the cable. Now I'm going to go ahead and mount the pedal down inside of the cockpit. So with the wife holding the pedals straight up and down, I'm going to go ahead and clamp the wires around the rudder. Okay, so do you feel me pulling?
Not letting you.
Good. So I've got the rudder lined up, hopefully best I can with the boat. And I've got some ferrules, my crimping tool. I'm going to use 3 just to make sure that this does not move. Alright, beautiful people, I know that was a long episode, and thank you so much for sticking through to the end. I want you guys to know that I really value you and your time, and so thank you from the bottom of my heart. Since you're still here, go ahead and click that subscribe button because we've got some things coming up on the channel. We're going to be doing some giveaways, and we're also going to have some merch. Alright, I'll see you guys next week.